and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai, an American living in Japan for 20 years. I've gone through some massive life changes and crises in my 20 years here. At its bleakest, I felt very isolated, alone, and helpless in the face of what was happening. I relied on alcohol and cigarettes to get through it the best I knew how, which worked until it didn't, and everything fell apart. I made it through with a little help from my friends, a fledgling mindfulness practice, and learning how to become my own strongest ally. I quit drinking and smoking, worked my way through my grief, found ways to forgive, created new connections, and started a regular exercise, meditation, and self-care routine. I've also become a national board certified health and wellness coach along the way, and developed a desire and passion to help others on their own personal journeys. This podcast is all about change, growth, healing yourself, learning how to get back up after life kicks you down, and exploring mindfulness and self-compassion as incredible tools available to each and every one of us to do just that. Welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai. In today's episode, I will be talking about one of my most favorite, most important things, love, as this episode will be released the day after Valentine's Day. It always feels like a really good time of the year to talk about this. And I almost have a little bit of cringe when I start throwing the term self-love around. It is what I am all about, and it has been such a vital part of my own personal journey. But I feel like there's just so much noise and a lot of garbage that gets included in the genre of self-care and self-help, self-improvement, all of that. It's become this completely kind of monetized and trivialized kind of subsection of a really booming global economy in health and wellness. And it's a weird space for me to be, because what I feel is so important and so vital and so very near and dear to me, kind of also gets lumped in with all of these other kind of icky things that are certainly not what I am all about and not what I'm talking about. So I just want to put that out there front and center when I am talking about self-love. As we will learn in this episode, I'm talking about something that's really powerful and something that has the power to ultimately change our lives and change the way that we interact with ourselves, with our place in the world, which obviously means our most near and dearest to us, our families, our friends, our coworkers, our communities. I believe that this really does create a ripple effect out into the greater world that isn't simply something like, the latest diet fad or health shake or 3 steps to calm your mind or something that we see kind of marketed to us on Instagram, or not that all of you do, but maybe I do in my feed. But yeah, it's really, really powerful, and it can be really, really life-changing. And it's not just self-soothing, which is another kind of way of thinking about this. If any of you are parents, you may be familiar with the term self-soothing from when your children were infants. And that term is employed when we are talking about infants who are trying to learn how to comfort themselves, and most generally in terms of being able to put themselves to sleep. So a lot of children will learn to, suck their thumbs or cuddle a stuffed animal, or maybe they have a special blanket. But essentially, they are creating a safe enough space that they are able to fall asleep on their own without their parent or their caregiver. And that is the idea behind self-soothing. So I think that a lot of what gets lumped in with self-care may actually be better understood under self-soothing. I think that there's overlap and there's absolutely gray areas here. So, you know, if I am having a really bad day, if I am feeling like I really need some comfort, maybe my self-care does look like having some ice cream after a long hot bubble bath or something like that. But I think the distinction is when we are doing and choosing those things, those activities, or those comfort foods or comfort substances or comfort activities, if we are intentionally choosing them, if they are the answers that are appearing to the question, what do I need right now? Which is the essential question of self-compassion. So if we are engaging in that process, if we are offering ourselves kindness and concern and care, and if we are intentionally asking ourselves, what is it that I need most right now? And that turns out to be the bubble bath and the ice cream, then that absolutely counts as self-care and as self-compassion and as listening to yourself and trying to provide yourself what you need. If we are mindlessly going to the tub of ice cream every single night because we're always feeling stressed, and that's what makes us feel better, in that it is numbing us, or it is distracting us, or it is taking us away from that pain or that suffering, I think then it probably falls more under the self-soothing category. So it's this idea of intentionality and mindfulness that I think really helps us to kind of think about whether we're doing something in a self-caring way or in a self-soothing way. So I think those are important terms to kind of think about, and some vocabulary that we might want to be really intentional about itself, thinking about if we are soothing ourselves, or are we actually caring for ourselves, much in the same way that parents care for their children. So we don't always let our children have the ice cream every single day, because we know that that is not good for them as well. Sometimes we want to encourage them to eat their vegetables or brush their teeth, even if they don't want to do it, different things like that. So there is this element of caring for ourselves, doing things that we know are good for us in the long run, and not just succumbing to, the pleasure in the moment all the time. We want to think about what we really do need to be healthy and to thrive and for our overall well-being. And sometimes that might look like ice cream when it is intentional and mindful, but it's not going to look like ice cream for every meal of the day. So thinking about those terms like self-soothing and self-care are important, because I believe that is kind of the first step as we journey inwards to figure out how to best love ourselves. The first step is awareness. So looking at what we usually do and what we do usually turn to when we are pushing away the pain and the suffering that we experience in our lives. So whether that's food, whether that's alcohol, whether that's work, whether that's our phones, we all have go-to things that we immediately, almost like a magnet, are turned towards when we experience discomfort. And the world right now feels full of discomfort. I'm recording this at the end of January 2025 when the United States is just reeling from the past week's events. And social media also feels very different. I think it remains to be seen if anything is actually different, but it feels different. It feels like a lot of people are wondering what to do and wondering how to cope with this really surreal, bizarre world that we seem to find ourselves in right now. On a personal level, I feel like there's also a lot of difficulties, honestly, happening, and a lot of low-lying background stress going on. And it's been occurring to me, one, that is what's happening. And two, this may be the first time that I am facing what feels like pretty big, heavy personal struggles and difficulties since I was able to quit my biggest vices and my biggest coping mechanisms. So in the past, I have spoken freely about turning to alcohol and cigarettes and, just trying to numb myself and avoid my reality the best I could because it was so difficult and it was so painful and it was just completely overwhelming to the point where I was simply unable to face it. This may be the first time since those other really big, painful events in my life that I am learning to navigate this, practicing what I'm preaching, actually employing all of my techniques and my skills and my strategies. So this episode is really speaking very much from the heart and very much from the front lines of facing a really difficult, uncertain, heavy world right now. The other day I was reaching out to my friend and I told her that, things might be feeling, not might, things were most likely, but I will say now with certainty, things are feeling very sad and heavy because things are sad and heavy right now. I have lots of challenges and I have lots of things that are weighing on me. We've had a lot of illness and sickness and a toddler who's going through a lot and work and life and all of these things are happening all at once. And I'm aware that is happening. I'm aware that I am attempting to navigate these waters and these stressful moments the best I know how, utilizing my mindfulness and utilizing things like self-compassion and utilizing also the self-care practices that I have come to rely on. So I was able to go on a very long run this morning out in nature where I feel connected and also paradoxically alone. I feel connected to nature and I saw the deer and I ran around the dam with all of the trees cold and barren and yet illuminated in the sun. And I'm alone with my thoughts and the podcast that I listen to as I run. And that is really, really nourishing for me. And I recognize and realize that even just those endorphins that are released, the dopamine from exercise is so good for me. And it provides me that sense of connection and joy and aliveness. And that is what helps sustain me and helps get me through the difficult times. That's just one example of something, that I have come to realize really, really does assist me. Same with my daily meditation practice. That's just a non-negotiable at this point, but every morning that is something else that I keep coming back to. I continue to offer myself metta or loving kindness, and I have that intention every morning. May I be happy. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I live with ease, and may I be free. And I offer those wishes to myself every morning in spite of or because of the uncertainty or the sad or the heavy emotions that I have been experiencing lately. So there's the awareness of either what we used to do and realize is no longer serving us, or the simple awareness of what we are able to do, what we are able to do for ourselves and our resourcing, our inner resilience. And something that, I have said recently in some workshops that I've been giving is sometimes when things are hard, when we are feeling stressful or we are going through difficult emotions or bewildering times, sometimes the best thing we can do is to not make it worse. And so that means looking at the basics, going for that run, taking the 30 minutes every morning to meditate, even something as simple as drinking more water or just getting outside and getting some fresh air and the sun on your face. Those are all little things that we can do to take care of ourselves and to make it not worse. If we are just succumbing to the sadness or succumbing to the uncertainty or succumbing to the news, and we get constricted and are just looking at our little tiny phone screens even and ignoring all of the other things that we could be doing, it's not going to make things any easier, and it's not going to make ourselves feel better. If we are constricted and narrowly focused, we are just going to continue on whatever that constricted, narrowly focused path or message or refrain is. So absolutely take the break from the news when you need to take the break from the news. Take the break from social media when you need to take the break from social media. Get outside and get that sun in your face, or drink more water, or move your body, or get better sleep. These are all the things that we can do to actually take care of ourselves and to not make things worse. And so the second layer of thinking about self-love and how we can truly care for ourselves, I think, is challenging the norms or challenging the expectations that are placed on us, often from a very young age. So whether that's things like stereotypical gender norms or pressures that are put on us from our family members of how we're supposed to do things or how we should live our lives, or what roles even what it means to be a good woman or a good mother or a good wife, challenging these kind of stereotypes, because I think so many of them are wrapped into things like organized religion and the patriarchy and capitalism. And all of those things are served by us feeling bad about ourselves. If we feel small and scared and insecure of ourselves and our places in the world, we buy stuff and we do stuff and we try to numb and avoid and distract. But by doing those things, by avoiding and numbing and distracting, we're just playing into those systems. And so by challenging those norms and starting to take a look at, wait a minute, why do I always put my family members' wants and needs before my own? What is that about? Starting to challenge some of those things, or starting to say, hey, what if I am enough just as I am right now? I think even for men, challenging the notion that, you have to be strong no matter what, or you have to provide for your family no matter what, and you're not allowed to be vulnerable or show emotion. Like, it's equally damaging for men as much as it is for women. And it's equally damaging for any category of person, I think, whether you think in racial or gendered or all of these different categories that are being created to divide and conquer us. If we are able to love ourselves and to tap into the fact that we are part of the universe experiencing itself in human form. And that means that we are already whole, complete, and perfect as we are, flaws and all, that is part of the experience. And that's part of how we learn and heal and grow. We loosen the hold that all of those things have on us. And I think also that gets into why I get kind of frustrated with the fact that even things like health and wellness have become a marketable commodity now, because it costs no money for us to go inward and to dive deep into ourselves and what we most need and what we most feel deeply, and to realize that we don't need all of this stuff that we're being sold, or all of these messages that we've received since this young age telling us that we're not enough in all of these different ways. We can truly change the way that we live in our lives and in the world if we realize that we have always been enough. So that was a bit of a tirade, but challenging those norms and challenging those expectations, I think, are the second layer that goes into learning how to really love ourselves and think about ourselves and think about how we want to go through the life, and what we do need. What kind of boundaries do we need to put around ourselves? What kind of boundaries do we need to put in place to ensure that we're able to be compassionate to both ourselves and to others, to the greater world at large? So the last layer is where I think it's like an onion. It just keeps going down and down and down. I have been exploring this and also simply trying to hold this and be with this as best I'm able recently, because that last layer is when we really dive in deep and try to listen to what our deepest wisdom and our most innermost core is trying to tell us. And this is where we have such a struggle, because there is so much to get through and there's so much to work through and to question and try to loosen up and open up and let go of all of the messaging and all of the limiting beliefs, all of the mindsets that we have put on as armor to get through the world, or simply were raised to believe without questioning. And once we go in deeper, we start to realize how much of it really is castles made of sand, how much we can change the way that we experience the world and the way that we understand ourselves and our place in it with, I say simple, but it's definitely not usually an easy process. But when we can change our mindset, we really can change everything about our lives. So, as a very personal example of this kind of process of going deeper or trying to dig into things that we have always maybe assumed or things that we were taught or raised or grew up believing as facts or truth with a capital T, I feel like a big chunk of my personal process that I'm most definitely still in the middle of has been thinking about and realizing how to find my voice. And as you are listening to me on a podcast right now, it's a bit on the nose, but I do feel like for so much of my life in so many different ways, it's not that I was necessarily silenced, and I have always certainly been the little Lisa Simpson that was raising her hand every time the teacher asked a question in class. And I certainly wasn't shy to offer my opinion or my perspective as a young college student or even as a young employee. But I think in a lot of more, perhaps fundamentally important ways, I don't feel like I have felt able to speak for myself or to speak from the heart. Maybe one way of thinking about it is that I haven't found the ways or found the way to use my voice to ask for what I need from various people along the way. And that certainly applies to myself. I will be the first to readily admit that I feel like I was living in such a fog or a dream or a crazy Alice in Wonderland adventure for much of my life. And I was not listening to myself. I thought I was, but I feel like this is another big layer of the onion that I've been diving into lately. That what I always assumed was self-awareness or self-reflection was another means of delusion, maybe. Or maybe it was muddled by the things that I was doing to myself and how unconnected or disconnected I was to my actual self and my physical body, and things like that. I share all of that very personal, very current exploration and process to say that it is a process. I don't think it probably ever ends. I think that we continue going further and further into the onion as long as we're willing to do so. And I also just want to say that it's really, really hard. And I think it can be really, really ultimately so incredibly rewarding if we are able to be brave enough and courageous enough to look our skeletons in the closet and our dark secrets in the face. But yeah, that it's not easy and it can be a really difficult process. But in doing so and in diving in deep, and really trying to listen to ourselves when we ask, what do I need? And being honest with what that small, quiet voice from within is saying, that is when we really get to the heart of self-love, and when we are really able to begin the sometimes awkward, painful, slow process of learning how to really love ourselves, and how to love ourselves through all of it, through the difficult times, through the good times. You know, I came across a meme or a quote or something recently that said something about how it's easy to be positive when times are good. When life feels connected and aligned and you're happy, it's really easy to be positive. The trick or the skill is to remain positive when times are hard. And it's not toxic positivity, and it's not spiritual bypassing. It's not, you know, ignoring the reality of the difficulty or the uncertainty or whatever it is, the trying times that you're living through, but being able to stick with it and to stick with yourself and say, yes, this is really hard right now, but I'm not alone. I'm not the only person in the history of the world that has felt this way or will feel this way. You know, this is part of the human experience. And so how can I be kind to myself? How can I show up for myself? What do I really need? And that is how we truly love ourselves, in realizing that we are here for ourselves through all of it, and that we're not going anywhere. We're not going to run away. We're not going to avoid reality. We're going to stick with ourselves, and we're going to stick with it. This is not to say that sometimes we do need to disengage and we do need to give ourselves a break. But again, that's, I think, where the deep listening comes in. If we can really start to work at asking and answering ourselves those questions, our ability to discern what is true self-care versus self-soothing, what is it that we really need when we're not kidding ourselves, or when we're not living up to other people's expectations or ideas. We get better and better at asking and at listening, and that manifests itself in the doing and how we live our lives and the choices we make that ultimately make us feel better. They release us from so much negativity and so many pressures and so many expectations and all of this baggage that all of us carry around all of our lives. The more that we can tune in to what we individually really need, the more we learn to tune out all of that. And taking that more relaxed, more aligned, more authentic version of ourselves forward into the world, of course, positively affects our families, our communities, and ultimately our world. There's a beautiful Ram Dass quote that says something like, "The only thing I can do for you is to work on me. The only thing you can do for me is to work on yourself." And I believe that is true for all of us throughout the world. If we are all able to do the process that I have outlined in this episode today, if everyone in the world was willing, able, and ready to start to examine their lives through the lens of awareness and question the expectations and stereotypes and norms that they have been saddled with since birth, and really dive deep into what they need or how they feel, imagine what a different world it could be. So I think that this inner work and this self-love goes way beyond just ourselves. It really is in the ultimate service of everyone and for all beings everywhere. I mentioned metta earlier when I was talking about my daily meditation. Traditionally, when we practice metta, we start with ourselves and then we offer it outwards in bigger and wider circles so that the last time you are repeating it, you offer the wishes of well-being for all beings everywhere. So it goes from may I be happy to may all beings be happy. May I be safe from inner and external harm to may all beings be safe from internal and external harm. May I live with ease turns to may all beings live with ease. And may I be free is the wish for all beings to be free. So that feels like a very good place to wrap this episode up with. I am incredibly curious if anyone has any thoughts or any feedback on any of the winding lanes and kind of rabbit holes I went down today. For today's takeaway, I offer and encourage metta, or loving kindness practice. You can use the phrases that I have mentioned today. You can Google metta if you'd like to learn more about it or familiarize yourself with the practice or the standard phrases. My phrases are pretty close to the kind of standard phrases, but basically pick 3-ish wishes that you would like to offer both to yourself and to members in your family, to strangers on the street, to coworkers, even our frenemies, and to all beings everywhere. So I encourage you to explore metta if you are interested. Try practicing some metta when you are stuck at a stoplight. If you have your own meditation practice, experiment with offering yourself metta either at the beginning or the end. Throw some metta at people as you walk past them on the street or in the line at the supermarket or driving in the car. You can be as creative with this as you'd like, but offer those well wishes to both yourself and to the greater world at large. So thank you so much for tuning in. Please continue to spread the love and share the word. Share this episode with any friends that you think would be interested to listen to the conversation. I appreciate all of the shares, feedback, and comments that I receive. And until next time, thank you so much for tuning in and take care.